It begins with silence. Not peace, not calm, but the kind of silence that presses against your ears, the kind that exists only in the seconds before something irreversible happens. A quiet neighborhood is frozen in time. Lawns trimmed, porch lights glowing softly. No sirens, no shouting, just a closed front door and a small black doorbell camera mounted beside it. A red light blinks steadily. Watching, recording, never judging. It was installed for safety, for reassurance, for the comfort of knowing someone or something was always keeping an eye out. No one imagined it would become a witness to murder. Inside the house, Sheylla Cabrera is doing nothing extraordinary. She isn't arguing. She isn't afraid. She isn't running. She's simply living. The most dangerous thing of all. A normal evening. Familiar walls. The quiet rhythm of a life that feels stable, predictable, safe. Time moves slowly inside that home, as it always does when nothing feels wrong. Outside, the camera waits. Then it happens. A knock. Not loud. Not violent. Not frantic. Just a firm, deliberate sound echoing through the hallway. Enough to demand attention. Enough to interrupt a thought. Enough to pull Sheylla toward the door. She doesn't hesitate long. Why would she? Doors are opened every day. To friends. To neighbors. To people we trust. To people we think we know. She walks toward the sound, unaware that this short walk, just a few steps across her home, will be replayed thousands of times by strangers searching for meaning, for warning signs, for something that might explain what comes next. The doorbell camera captures fragments. That's all it ever does. Pieces without context. A figure standing just outside the frame. A body shifting its weight from one foot to the other. A face partially hidden by angle and shadow. Nothing overtly threatening. Nothing that screams danger. Just subtle movements that only make sense in hindsight. Seconds pass. Then more. The door opens. What follows isn't chaos. There is no sudden explosion of sound. No desperate screams tearing through the night. No neighbors rushing outside. What happens is far more unsettling than that. It is calm. Too calm. In true crime, we expect violence to announce itself. We expect it to be loud, messy, obvious. We want evil to look like evil. But sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it arrives quietly, politely, disguised as something familiar. Sometimes it looks like someone you wouldn't think twice about letting inside. The camera keeps recording. Unemotional. Unbiased. It doesn't understand what it's witnessing. It only knows how to capture time as it passes. Every second preserved. Every movement stored. A digital memory that will soon matter more than anyone realizes. Hours later, the house is silent again. But this time, it's different. This silence isn't temporary. It doesn't break. It settles in. Heavy. Permanent. When investigators arrive, they're met with a scene that refuses to explain itself. No signs of forced entry. No broken locks. No shattered glass. Nothing that suggests a stranger kicked their way inside. The rooms look lived in. Normal. Almost peaceful. Too peaceful for what they're standing in the middle of. There are no eyewitnesses. No one heard a scream. No one saw a struggle. No one noticed anything unusual at all. Just a woman gone, a life ended, and questions echoing through empty rooms. In cases like this, time is cruel. Every minute that passes allows doubt to grow. Evidence fades. Memories blur. And without answers, speculation fills the gaps. Yet one thing remains awake. One thing never blinked. The doorbell camera. At first, it doesn't seem important. It's just another piece of modern technology bolted to a wall. Something millions of homes have. Something people barely think about. But detectives know better. They've learned that the smallest details often carry the greatest weight. They watch the footage once. Nothing jumps out. They watch it again. Slower this time. Then again. They begin to notice what the camera can't explain, but clearly shows. The body language. The distance between two people at the door. The way Sheylla pauses for a fraction of a second before opening it. A hesitation so brief it would mean nothing to anyone else. But to investigators, it feels important. That pause becomes a question. Why did she hesitate? Sheylla was cautious by nature. Friends would later say that. She trusted, but not blindly. She paid attention. She listened to her instincts. Which makes one thing disturbingly clear. She knew the person who knocked. That realization changes everything. This isn't a random act. This isn't a stranger lurking in the dark. This is personal. Intimate. Close enough to cross the threshold without force. Close enough to be let in. And suddenly, The idea of safety inside one's own home feels fragile, almost naive. The camera doesn't capture what happens inside. It can't show the words exchanged, the looks shared, the moment where a line is crossed. But what it does capture is enough to suggest that what unfolded wasn't impulsive. It wasn't chaotic. It was controlled. Somewhere between that knock and the silence that followed, a decision was made. A decision that couldn't be undone. A decision that would ripple outward, destroying families, exposing secrets, and forcing a quiet community to confront the idea that danger doesn't always come from the outside. Sometimes, it comes from within. As investigators stand there, watching the footage late into the night, one thought lingers unspoken in the room. If this camera could speak, what would it say? What truths are hidden in those seconds before the door opens? Because whatever happened next didn't just end a life. It opened a door to betrayal, to hidden relationships, to secrets buried beneath the surface of what looked like a normal, stable world. And the most terrifying part? The footage is only the beginning. What it reveals next will be far more disturbing than anyone is ready for. The investigation doesn't begin with answers. It begins with doubt, with the uncomfortable feeling that something is wrong, but not knowing where to look. Detectives step into the home where Sheylla Cabrera lived her life. The air feels still, almost respectful, as if the house itself is holding its breath. Nothing appears broken, nothing overturned, no shattered glass, no forced locks. The kind of scene investigators hate most. Clean, quiet, deceptively normal. They walk room to room, not searching for what's there, but for what isn't. No signs of a struggle, no chaos, no desperate fight for survival etched into the walls or furniture. It looks peaceful, too peaceful for a home where someone lost their life. That detail alone changes the tone of the case. Because violence usually leaves scars, and when it doesn't, it suggests something far more intimate, something controlled, something close. Friends and family are interviewed, voices trembling, eyes heavy with disbelief. They describe Sheylla the same way, over and over. Careful, alert, a woman who trusted her instincts, someone who didn't take unnecessary risks, not someone who would open the door to a stranger late at night. That detail matters, because it narrows the world of possibilities down to one terrifying conclusion. She knew the person who knocked. That realization hangs in the air like smoke. Unseen, but suffocating. The crime is no longer random. It's personal, domestic, rooted in relationships that outsiders never fully see. Attention turns back to the doorbell footage. At first glance, it seems underwhelming. Just a short clip. A visitor at the door. A brief interaction without sound. Nothing graphic. Nothing overtly violent. If you didn't know the outcome, you might not even look twice. But detectives do. They watch it again. And again. They slow it down. Freeze frames. Zoom in. Study body language the way psychologists study patients. Because true crime isn't solved by what people say. It's solved by what they don't. They notice posture. The way the visitor doesn't face the camera head-on. The slight angle, as if avoiding being fully seen. The subtle shift of weight from one foot to the other. A sign of nerves. Or anticipation. Then there's Sheylla. She opens the door, but not immediately. There's a pause. Just a fraction of a second. A moment where something inside her hesitates. That pause becomes everything. It suggests recognition mixed with uncertainty. Familiarity tangled with doubt. That pause says more than words ever could. Investigators begin asking harder questions. Who in her life had access to her trust? Who knew her routines? Who would she open the door for, even if something felt slightly off? As the footage circulates internally, theories multiply. Was this a crime of passion? An argument that spiraled out of control? A confrontation fueled by jealousy, resentment, or betrayal? Or was it something darker? Something planned? Behind the scenes, the pressure builds. Every unsolved hour invites speculation. Every unanswered question becomes a seed for rumors. But the public doesn't see that yet. To the outside world, it's just another tragic headline. Another name. Another statistic in a long list of stories that come and go. Inside the investigation, it feels anything but ordinary. Detectives retrace Sheyella's final days. Phone records, messages, relationships, patterns. They search for cracks beneath the surface of what looked like a normal life. And slowly, quietly, those cracks begin to appear. A missing spouse, unspoken tensions, whispers of relationships that weren't as stable as they seemed. Domestic crimes often hide behind closed doors. They were the mask of routine, of normalcy, of smiling photos and polite conversations. And when they explode, they leave everyone asking the same question. How did no one see this coming? Time becomes the enemy. The longer it takes, the harder it gets. Memories soften. Stories shift. People forget details. Or worse, they start rewriting them. Investigators feel the weight of that clock ticking louder with every passing day. Then comes the escalation. Someone notices something new in the footage. A movement that didn't stand out before. A subtle step forward by the visitor just before the door opens. Not aggressive, not rushed, but intentional, as if they knew exactly how this moment was supposed to unfold. That changes everything. Because random encounters don't look like that. Accidents don't rehearse body language. What the camera captured wasn't surprise. It was preparation. Detectives realize they aren't just watching the beginning of a crime. They're watching the final act of a story that started long before that night. A story filled with hidden resentments, unspoken conflicts, and secrets kept in the dark. The doorbell camera didn't just record a visit. It recorded intent. And once that truth sinks in, there's no turning back. The case crosses a line. It's no longer about if someone meant to do harm. It's about who decided this moment would be the end. As investigators sit in the glow of computer screens late into the night, replaying those same seconds over and over, one thought refuses to leave them. If intent can be seen, then guilt may not be far behind. But proving it will require peeling back layers of lies, betrayal, and relationships that were never as simple as they appeared. And the next revelation will force everyone involved to confront a truth far more disturbing than a knock at the door. Because sometimes, the person who plans your destruction is already inside your life. Breakthroughs don't announce themselves with sirens. They don't arrive with celebration. They come quietly, in the dead hours of the night, when exhaustion lowers defenses and truth finally slips through. The investigation has reached that stage. The room is dim. Coffee cups sit untouched. Eyes burn from staring at the same footage for days. The doorbell video plays again on a monitor, its grainy stillness almost mocking. Most people would have turned away by now, but one investigator doesn't. Not yet. He rewinds, plays it again, slower, zooms in, stabilizes the image, reduces the noise, sharpens the edges. Frame by frame, second by second, he watches what everyone else has already seen, and suddenly notices what they all missed. There it is. A detail so small it hides in plain sight. A movement that doesn't match the story that's been told. A moment that contradicts everything the suspect claimed in interviews. The timeline no longer makes sense. The narrative begins to crack. The doorbell camera didn't just capture a knock. It captured control. The suspect's body language tells a story words never could. The step forward isn't casual. It isn't polite. It's deliberate, assertive, predatory. A movement meant to close distance, to dominate space, to decide how this interaction will end. And then there's the pause. Not hesitation, not confusion, calculation. That pause becomes the pivot point of the entire case. Because people who are unsure hesitate differently. People who are afraid retreat. But this pause? This pause belongs to someone making sure the moment unfolds exactly as planned. The investigator leans back. Silent. He knows now. Not everything, but enough. The footage is played side by side with the suspect's statement. The words say one thing. The body says another. And bodies don't lie. Not when they don't know they're being watched. When the suspect is brought back in for questioning, the room feels different. Smaller. Tighter. The air heavy with unspoken certainty. The confidence that once filled the chair across the table is gone. It's subtle at first. A stiff jaw. Averted eyes. Hands clenched just a little too tight. The footage plays. Again. And again. The suspect watches themselves on screen. Watches their own movements stripped of excuses. The step forward. The angle away from the camera. The timing that no longer matches their story. That's when it happens. The crack. Stories begin to shift. Details change. Timelines bend. Innocent explanations start piling up, each one weaker than the last. What was once said with confidence is now delivered with hesitation. Long pauses replace quick answers. Silence stretches between questions. Technology has done what witnesses could not. It has removed ambiguity. There's no arguing with the footage. No convincing a camera it misunderstood intent. The suspect can feel it slipping. Control. Authority. The narrative they thought they owned. What follows isn't a confession. Not yet. It's something quieter, more revealing. A psychological unraveling. Interviews grow tense. Voices drop. Answers come slower. Sometimes not at all. The footage plays on a loop in the interrogation room. A silent observer watching the person who never thought they'd be seen this clearly. For the first time, investigators see the full shape of the truth. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a moment that got out of hand. It was a decision. A decision made in seconds, but rooted in weeks, months, maybe longer. A decision fed by resentment, by jealousy, by betrayal that festered quietly behind closed doors. Domestic crimes rarely explode out of nowhere. They simmer. They hide beneath routines, behind shared meals, inside relationships that look stable from the outside. Affairs whispered, trust broken, power shifting slowly until someone decides they're done pretending. The footage doesn't show those months. It doesn't show the arguments or the secrets, but it shows the end result. The moment where all of it converges into a single action. Investigators begin connecting the dots. The missing spouse, the inconsistencies and alibis, the emotional distance that friends noticed but couldn't explain, the subtle signs of a life unraveling beneath a polished surface. The doorbell camera becomes more than evidence. It becomes a mirror, a reflection of who the suspect really was when they thought no one was watching. And that realization hits hard, because it means the truth was never hidden. It was right there, waiting, recorded, preserved, silent but patient. When Sheylla Cabrera opened her door that night, she didn't just let someone inside her home. She stepped into the final chapter of a story she never knew she was part of. A story written by someone else's choices, someone else's bitterness, someone else's need for control. The moral weight of that settles heavily on everyone involved. Because this wasn't about rage alone. It was about entitlement. The belief that another person's life could be interrupted, altered, ended, because of desire, jealousy, or wounded pride. Because someone felt owed an outcome that reality refused to give them. The doorbell camera didn't raise its voice. It didn't intervene. It didn't save her. But it did something just as powerful. It told the truth. And once that truth was seen, it could never be unseen. The suspect knows it now. Investigators know it. The case has crossed a point of no return. But justice isn't finished yet. Not even close. Because seeing the moment someone crosses a line is one thing. Holding them accountable for it is another. And as the footage fades to black at the end of the clip, one question hangs unanswered, heavy and unresolved. If this camera showed the moment intent was revealed, what will it take to prove that intent beyond doubt? The truth is closer than ever. But the most painful part of the story still lies ahead. Justice doesn't always arrive with relief. Sometimes it arrives with weight. Heavy, uncelebrated, and impossible to put down. By the time the case of Sheylla Cabrera reached its end, there were no cheers. No sense of victory. Only a quiet understanding that something irreversible had happened, and no legal outcome could ever undo it. A life had been taken. A truth had surfaced too late to save her, but not too late to matter. The courtroom felt different from the crime scenes investigators had walked months earlier. Sterile, controlled, almost detached from the violence that brought everyone there. Wooden benches, soft shuffling of feet, the low hum of air conditioning filling the spaces between breaths. This wasn't a place for emotion to explode. It was a place where emotion was contained. The doorbell footage played again. For some, it was just evidence. For others, it was unbearable. Each replay reopened wounds for Sheyella's loved ones. They watched the same seconds over and over. The knock, the pause, the opening of a door that should have led to nothing more than an ordinary interaction. Knowing what followed made every frame feel cruel. But within that pain was something else, too. Certainty. No unanswered questions. No lingering doubts. No wondering what really happened behind that closed door. The footage had taken away the possibility of denial. It had stripped the story down to what it was, a deliberate act rooted in betrayal, control, and hidden truths that had been allowed to grow in silence. In a case tangled with domestic tension, missing trust, and relationships that were not what they appeared to be, that certainty mattered. In court, there were no dramatic outbursts, no shouting, no collapsing confessions, just the quiet weight of accountability settling onto one person's shoulders. The suspect sat still, listening as the evidence spoke for itself. The camera didn't accuse. It didn't editorialize. It simply showed what happened. And that was enough. Justice, in moments like this, doesn't feel like closure. It feels like acceptance. Acceptance that some things can't be fixed. That some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. Outside the courtroom, life continued. Cars passed. People checked their phones. Ordinary moments unfolded just as they had on the night Sheyella's life ended. That contrast was unsettling. How the world keeps moving, even after something so final. The moral of this story is uncomfortable because it forces us to look inward. Evil doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always arrive with anger or violence on its face. Sometimes it looks familiar. Sometimes it sounds calm. Sometimes it knocks politely. This case reminds us how fragile ordinary moments are. How thin the line is between safety and danger. How quickly life can change between a doorbell ringing and a door opening. One sound, one decision, one moment of misplaced trust. Technology didn't prevent the crime. It didn't step in. It didn't warn her. It didn't save her life. But it did something else. It refused to let the truth disappear. In a world where so many victims are reduced to headlines and forgotten just as quickly, that matters. The footage ensured that Sheyella's story didn't fade into uncertainty. It preserved the moment when intent became action, when betrayal crossed into violence, when hidden truths finally surfaced. For investigators, the case became a reminder of why details matter, why patience matters, why silence can sometimes speak louder than testimony. For families watching from the outside, it became a lesson in how little we sometimes know about the lives unfolding behind closed doors. And for the rest of us, it leaves an uneasy question lingering. How well do we really know the people we trust? How often do we mistake familiarity for safety? And how many warning signs do we overlook because nothing has gone wrong yet? Justice was served in the legal sense. A verdict reached. A sentence delivered. But justice, in its truest form, is heavier than that. It lives in memory, in lessons learned too late, in the responsibility to pay attention when something feels off, even if we can't explain why. Because sometimes justice isn't about stopping the darkness. Sometimes it's about making sure it's seen. And as the doorbell footage fades into history, preserved on servers and in case files, its message remains. Quiet, unblinking, waiting. A reminder that truth has a way of surviving, even when someone doesn't.